Well, welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the Harmon Museum August Lunch and Learn. I am John Zimkus, the Education Director and Historian here. I've known Randy Overbeck for about 25, close to 30 years, I imagine. Randy has been an educator for 30 plus years, a teacher, a coach, a principal, a superintendent, a college professor. In 2007, I moved across the street from Randy, and then he started writing weird books. And I don't know if there's a connection there, but all of a sudden, ghost stories start coming into his mind, and other weird things start happening. His thriller, Leave No Child Behind, came out in 2012. More recent books, The Blood on Chesapeake, 2019, Crimson of Cape May, 2020, has earned a 5-star review and guarded the National Award of Thriller of the Year from the ReadersFavorite.com. Golden Award in Literary Titan and Mystery of the Year from ReadersView.com. His presentation today is Things That Go Bump in the Night. In researching, he's found some very odd things, some which are not explained or cannot be explained, but he's willing to share some of the things he has uncovered. Ladies and gentlemen, my one-time boss, my one-time neighbor, Randy Overbeck.
Thank you, John. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, sounds good. All right, before I start, let me kind of give a couple of caveats. First of all, I'm about to share with you a research that I did for the books. You'll learn when you read my books, I do a great deal of research for each one of my novels. And since a small portion of each book is about ghosts, there's a great deal of research that I did on ghosts. However, I don't pretend to be an expert. I'm certainly not. I mean, John is kind of like the expert on history around here. I don't have that kind of expertise, but I have picked up quite a bit. My second little note before I start is I have on your table a little sign-up sheet. If you're interested in learning more or getting more information, I have a newsletter that goes out about once a month. I don't ever give your address to anybody else, but if you're interested, sign it up. I'll pick it up when I'm finished. Okay, and I should have one other. I'm a little rusty because I haven't done this like the rest of you. I did about 25 of these before COVID shut us all down, and then things started. But I'll see if I can't do my best. I call this Things Go Bump in the Night, and I start with a question. Do you believe in ghosts? So how many people in this room believe in ghosts? Raise your hand. Okay, that's pretty normal. Well, they've done a couple of surveys, and the results of both surveys, one in 2003 and one in 2017, came out almost exactly the same, about half. One was 48%, the other survey was 51% of people who responded said that they believe in ghosts. They actually believe that there is a spiritual presence among us that we sometimes experience, which brings me to my second question. Anybody in this room ever experienced an encounter with a ghost? If you have, raise your hand. Anybody? See them, hear them, smelled them, touched. Now this will surprise you. There were two other surveys that actually asked that question. Have you had a ghostly encounter? 1 in 5 people said that they have had some kind of experience with somebody from the other side. Now, I use those numbers just kind of as a starting point because I'm trying to make the point that this is not necessarily a silly question. It's not something that's just something for kids. It is a major force in our culture, and if you haven't seen them yet, just check out all of the ghost shows that are on cable television. They're on Sci-Fi TV, they're on the History Network, they're on the British Network, they're even on Home and Garden Network. Also, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, there are organizations in every state, in almost every area, that are dedicated to investigating ghosts. We have about 4 or 5 of them in our general area here. I do this presentation all over the United States, so I put some in from a couple of other places where I've been. This particular group, Central Indiana Paranormal Society, I've actually met with those people and have seen some of their documentation. I imagine we have some Ohio State fans. I am becoming a big Ohio State fan because today, my granddaughter from California goes to Ohio State today. And those are ghost hunters from Ohio State, and I happen to like this particular logo with the Fargo ones with the noose in the tree. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. Here's another thing that I found fascinating. If you belong to a faith community anywhere in the world, then one part of your faith mythology, one part of your faith beliefs is a belief in ghosts. So it doesn't matter if you were raised Christian or Muslim or Buddhist, whatever religion you believe in has a belief in ghosts. I'm just going to share with you a couple of examples. I'm a Catholic. I was raised Catholic. There is a part in my catechism that's talked about, in my 4th grade catechism, talked about ghosts are evil spirits that lead people to sin. And Islam has one of the more fascinating beliefs in ghosts. Islam has a belief in ghosts that they call that ghosts are creatures that live in a parallel universe, and they like to cause mischief among human beings. They call these jinns. We know jinns, but in our culture, jinns are actually called genies. So a genie is a ghost in the Islam culture. Buddhists have like an opposite belief in ghosts. In here, if you mention ghosts to Americans, most people think of something to fear. That's kind of our perception. In Buddhists, it's actually the opposite. Buddhists believe that ghosts are creatures that need our help, that they should be treated with compassion and care. They're not scary creatures. Hindus, the belief that Hindus have in ghosts is almost exclusively people who have died unnatural death, murder, accidents, something like that. Almost every group, and I've given this enough, and there's it's usually a guy, there's almost always somebody in the group that's doing this to me. And there's almost always somebody that goes, the only people who believe in ghosts are idiots and kids. So I like to share with them you might be surprised how many incredible scientists, intelligent people that have believed. Some of them are gone and some of them still do. I'll give you a few examples. I don't know that we have any NASCAR fans in the group here. But if I did, you would know that this guy is, anybody? His name is Junior, or his name is Dale Earnhardt Jr., but if you're a NASCAR fan, it's just Junior. Now, if you're not a NASCAR fan, you don't know this, but NASCAR fans know this. Dale Earnhardt Jr. said that he was doing a practice run on a track in 2004 and had this horrendous crash. His car crashed, the car explodes. He says to this day, a ghost came. There was nobody by him. He's on the other end of a ghost came and dragged him out of his car and saved his life. Ronald Reagan was in the White House. He saw a tall, transparent figure in the Lincoln bedroom and never went back in that room again. Okay. Thomas Edison. Okay. Everybody knows who Thomas Edison is, who holds more patents than anyone else in the U.S. Thomas Edison also confided to a reporter that he was working on a spirit phone so he could talk to the dead. Sir Paul McCartney may have more hits than about anybody else. He recently shared that the ghost of John Lennon had helped him write some of his most recent work. So that kind of brings me to my piece de resistance that everybody loves. So somebody always says in the group, okay, well, how come we don't have evidence? I'm about to show you a couple of things that I think are pretty convincing. My first example, these are all old, incidentally. I'll explain my term old in a minute. But the first one is about this young woman here. Her name is Lady Dorothy Walpole, also known as Dorothy Townshend. And you can please note when she lived. So late 1700s, early 1800s. And she lived, and in those days, she was in an arranged marriage, and as many of those marriages were, she was unhappy. And as many of those people did in those marriages, both male and female, they found other romantic partners. Well, what's different about Dorothy is that her husband, when he found out, was incensed. It didn't matter that he had liaisons. He was incensed that she would dare to do that, and he actually took her and locked her in one of his mansions. So she had to stay in this mansion called Wrentham Hall for her entire life. She was never able to leave that mansion. And yes, they were allowed to do that back then. If you go to that mansion today, you may likely run into her ghost. Her ghost has been spotted several times. This is a picture of her ghost coming down the stairs at her hall. Now notice this picture was taken in 1936. This is long before you could do anything fancy with any photography. And there's a clear picture of the ghost coming down the hall. The second one is, I don't have as much of a backstory for, but this gentleman, this Reverend Ford in the 50s was going around to British churches taking pictures of things he liked in the church. He was actually taking a picture of this organ that's on the left side of the picture. He didn't see this figure, this ghostly figure that shows up in the picture until he went home and developed the picture. And you can see there's clearly the ghost of an image of a ghost with a ghoulish face. I don't have the story behind that. I will tell you that it is very common that ghosts will show up in a photograph that the individual taking the photograph wasn't aware that they were taking a ghost at the time. This is my favorite. I was telling you about those ghost hunters earlier. Well, this is about a group of ghost hunters in Chicago that were asked to investigate a small abandoned cemetery, probably not unlike our cemetery right here in Lebanon. And they did what they always do. They go at night. They had a small crew, probably 3 people. They bring photographic equipment, audio equipment, video equipment, and they stayed there. On the evening that they were there, they had been told it was haunted, and they were trying to substantiate that or not. They didn't find anything. They didn't hear anything. They didn't feel anything. When they went home and developed their photographs, they found this picture. Now, there was no one in this is at night. There's nobody in the cemetery. And there's clearly a picture of a young woman crying on a tombstone, or in front of a tombstone that you can't see because it's blocked by the tree. But the tombstone is right there in front of her. And when they went back to look, there was a tombstone of a young man that had died, and that they found out later. This last one is my favorite because it's a school. So this is a story of a haunted school in Ireland, Cork City, Ireland, that they had said for years this school was haunted. And they ended up taking this video. I think you can hear it. It's about a minute long. This is in the middle of the night. Look at the time, 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh, just keep watching. Pretty remarkable video, right? You can look it up yourself. And it was taken at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's nobody in the school. And they walk in the next day and they find this video. So I kind of share some of that background and research to get to this point. So One of the things that I try really hard in my books is to portray ghosts as they have been documented by people who have been involved in that business and is common across belief systems. And here's a couple of common threads. Even though the belief that Hindus have is a little different of ghosts than what we have, there are things that are very similar. So for example, almost all of the belief in ghosts have come to the agreement that ghosts are individuals who have passed on. They are in fact people who have died, but are stuck between this world and the next for some reason. We don't really know why. This is one of the things that I found amazing. This has been documented all over the world, that ghosts are able to change the temperature in the room when they enter and when they leave. We don't know why. It has to do with energy, but we don't have any idea. I actually saw a video, what they do, so here's how they record that. So these ghost hunters bring in all this very complicated scientific equipment. One of it is judging the temperature in the room. And they showed me where in this room, a room about this size, well actually it was a little narrower in this, they were taking a video and they're showing this, they have a video of the temperature, and the temperature in 20 seconds, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. And then about a minute later, the temperature went back up. It's really remarkable. And most people who are experts on ghosts believe that ghosts have some kind of unfinished business that they need to resolve. That's why they cannot move on. So that kind of brings me all the way full circle to, excuse me, to my books. I put this up because this is what one of the first reviewers said, and I really like it. They call it a cold case murder mystery wrapped in a ghost story, served with a side of romance, all set in stunning locations. The first location is the Chesapeake, because my wife and I fell in love with the Chesapeake, and I found it's a wonderful place to do a ghost story. The second one is in Cape May. If you're not familiar with Cape May, it is the very last stop on the Garden State Parkway, all the way at the bottom of New Jersey. It's the oldest resort in the United States. People have been coming to that beach for over 150 years. And it's the most haunted seaport on the eastern shore. And then the last one is the newest one called Scarlet at Crystal River. I'll tell you about Crystal River in a little bit. I have a very unusual hero. My hero is a history teacher, not unlike Mr. Simpkins here. And a history teacher and a coach. He's a football and basketball coach who sees ghosts, but he's not really happy that he has that particular belief. And he has other problems. He has OCD and some other issues. And he looks pretty much like that actor. So that's not really him, of course. It also features a romantic interest who eventually becomes his wife. His name is Erin Cavaney. She's a nurse, and she's not a sensitive. A sensitive is a person who can see ghosts, who becomes his partner and his soothsayer. The other thing that I wanted to do in my stories is I wanted to make a point. I believe that it's important, if you're a writer, that you're writing about things that matter. So in each story, the mystery is tied to a much greater crime. So in in the first one, Blood on the Chesapeake, the murder is actually about a racist killing. In the second one, Crimson at Cape May, the murder of the young bride turns out to be connected to a human trafficking ring. And in the third one, it's about mistreatment of migrants in Florida. I'm very, very fortunate. The books have done very well, as John was mentioning. They've won several national awards from different organizations. And I've been thrilled. They've won more than a dozen 5-star reviews from, there's a few of the companies or organizations that have given 5-star reviews to the books, magazines. I want to tell you just a little tiny bit about each book, and then I'll wrap this up and you can ask any questions you want. In the first book, Daryl is a Midwesterner. He actually is from Michigan. He flees the Midwest from a broken heart and goes to the eastern shore, where he happens to fall in love, gets a great job, but he ends up encountering a ghost that changes his life dramatically. In the end of that book, he ends up losing his job, so he has to go to the Jersey Shore to do a summer football coach. And while he's there, he runs into another ghost who wants his help, a ghost called the Haunted Bride. And in the process of trying to help her, he stumbles on a major crime ring that has to do with human trafficking. The third book, which actually you are the very first people to see that. The book is not out. Its official launch is September 13th. But as authors, we get advance copies, so I brought a few of mine with me. So you get that here. Daryl and Aaron are have gotten married, and they're going to Florida for the honeymoon for the winter, or over the Christmas holidays. But their romance is interrupted by the ghost of two murdered children that they discover when they were in there. It's also a Christmas mystery. It takes place over Christmas time, so it was fun to write. Each of the books are $20. This is the first time I've ever had this opportunity. If anybody's interested in purchasing the set, I've got 2 sets up here. I'm able to sell those for $55. They are cheaper online. They're also available online. The first book is also available in audio version. Blood on the Chesapeake is available in audio version. Crimson at Cape May will be available in an audio version in 2 weeks. Scarlet Christopher is going to be it takes almost about 6 months to a year to go from the book to the audio version. So it'll be some time, but the narrator is working on that. Last month, the first book became a bestseller on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So I'm really, really pumped about that. I also shouldn't leave here without, if you're not a mystery lover, I also have a thriller. That was the one that John mentioned earlier, called Leave No Child Behind. It's a story of another teacher, this time an English teacher, who finds a way to defeat the terrorists who have invaded her school. And this also won a national award too when it came out. It's a little cheaper, it's only $15. So that brings me to my last point, which I think you'll probably enjoy about this author that you might have heard of before, an obscure guy by the name of John Grisham. Anybody ever heard of John Grisham? Well, I'm going to tell you the story about his first book. Now, his first book was called A Time to Kill. It came out in 1989. And John, when he wrote that book, he sent it to lots of editors, lots of publishers, lots of agents, and got nobody interested. In fact, in a talk that I heard him give, he said if you go to his office he lives in Mississippi, his office in Mississippi, one entire wall is papered with all these rejection slips for that manuscript. He says he does that there to keep him humble. I'm not sure that works, but anyway, he desperately wanted to be a writer. He had gotten to a point in his life where he had decided, I'm supposed to be a writer. Now, you might remember what he did for a living. You remember what he did for a living? He was a lawyer, okay? So he kept working, and he found a small press that was willing to publish his book in Florida, a small Christian press. Now, in case you don't remember, I'll tell you a little bit about this story because it's kind of important. So A Time to Kill is a story of these two idiot rednecks who find this 12-year-old black girl walking along the side of the road, chain her to the back of their truck and drag her behind her back of the truck and kill her. I'm not really spoiling the story for you. All of what I just told you happens in like the first 12 pages. The book is actually the story of and then her father kills those guys. So it's the story of the trial of that father. That's what this book is all about. I tell you that because I'm going, now you know what the story is. Christian book company publisher. Okay. They did what was standard in those days. They ran 5,000 copies. It did not sell. It went out of print. John, at this point, was absolutely beside him. He wanted to be a writer. So he quit his job. I can imagine that was an interesting conversation around the home table. He quit his job. He went to the publisher and said, just give me boxes of books. He went around in 1989, 88 this was probably, and drove around the South from small bookstore to small bookstore and said, just put 4 books up. Just put 4 up. If they sell, great, give the money to the publisher. If they don't sell, I'll come back and get them. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, someplace in Florida, an agent picked up the book, read it, liked it, and then contacted John and said, this isn't bad. Do you have anything else? He said, I'm working on this book called The Firm, and the rest, as they say, is history. So that's kind of like my long-winded way of saying, don't you today, especially John would love this, don't you today wish you had one of those 5,000 first edition copies of A Time to Kill? Well, you can't, but you can get mine, which are the next best thing. I do have one favor I ask of every audience. When you're a nobody author like me, the only way we get anywhere, the only way anything happens is word of mouth. So whether this is your cup of tea or not, I put two bookmarks in front of everybody's place. Please take those home. If it's not for you, find somebody that you know. I bet your next door neighbor loves mysteries, or your son, or your grandson, or whatever. These are all PG-13. There's nothing in here that I wouldn't have. Well, actually, my grandchildren have read all these. But pass those on, because that's how you can help me get from nothing to at least a little bit of something. All right, I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with you. Is there any questions I can answer for anybody? Yes?
The audiobooks, who does the voices for the audio?
Well, I work with a publisher. The publisher is called Wild Rose Press for the books, and they had set me up with somebody who does that. His name is Richard Gaffiro, and he is absolutely remarkable. I've never worked with anybody before. I never knew what that was like. I actually went through 3 narrators before I picked Richard, and he does a great job. He did a wonderful job with Blood on the Chesapeake, but I just like a week and a half ago, finished reviewing. So what happens is he has to do it. I have to listen to everything and make sure he didn't make any mistakes and stuff. He did an even better job on Crimson and Cape May than he did on Blood on the Chesapeake. So I can't wait to see what he does with Scarlet. It's a kind of a complicated process. It takes him probably weeks to do this. It's 10 hours of recording. You can imagine how difficult that is. And then I have to review everything, so it's a pretty complicated process. Any other question? Yes?
Do you write every day?
Do I write every day? Well, I'd like to say I write every day. I try really hard to write every day. I'm retired, so you think, oh, you can do that. But by the time I get to everything that I have to do for my wife and take care of the answer, no, but I come close. The problem is that you guys probably don't know this. I mean, if you're a writer, if you're an author, even if you are published by a decent publisher, and this is a really nice publisher, they have 500 authors, they don't do anything for you. So every kind of marketing, every kind of publicity, everything you can think of, you have to do. So my time now is divided between writing and I haven't written anything new in the past month because I've been spending every day working on marketing stuff. But I do try to dedicate pretty much, I'm not a Stephen King, okay? I don't know if you know the story about Stephen King. Stephen King gets up 8 o'clock or whatever time, starts going in his office and writes. He doesn't come out until dinner time every day. Doesn't even take lunch. His wife sends lunch under the door. He writes 364 days a year. The only day he doesn't write is Christmas. I don't do that. But I do try to write on a regular schedule, a couple of hours every day. I find that works best for me. Yes?
Could you change publishers at some point?
Oh, yeah. But what I've found out, even from my good friends that have really big publishers, they don't do squat either anymore. I have a real good friend by the name of William Kent Kruger, who's published by Random House. And they do a little bit up front, but they really, the days of when you turn your book over and then somebody else, a marketing team takes it, even for the big guys, that doesn't exist anymore. One of my very best friends is Jim Trelease, who wrote the Read Aloud Handbook. And Jim Trelease told me, so they've had 6 editions. This handbook has sold, 30 million copies. When the last one came out, he said they didn't do hardly anything for it, publishing-wise. So, and he had done this over long. He said, what a big difference. So it's just kind of what you have to get used to. That's what you got to do.
You have someone that proofreads for you?
Yes. The short answer is yes. What I do, as I am creating my masterpiece, I'm sending it in portions to a beta readers group. Now that beta isn't editing, they're giving me feedback of what's working or what's not working, or I didn't like this character, I did like this character, or any of those kind of things. In addition to that, I have somebody that's also editing. I then, because I happen to like this woman really, really well, that I think the work that she does really well. Another author who is a great editor. So I send it to her because she will not only find my misplaced commas, which I'm actually pretty good at that because I'm an English teacher, but she'll find my mistakes, but she'll see things that I wouldn't see. In addition to all that, one thing the publisher does, they have an editor who is really very, very good. And she will go through and she says that when she gets my manuscripts, mine are among the best of any that she has, but she'll still find some things that are wrong and send them to me. Sometimes we argue about, no, I want it the way it is, and she'll, that kind of stuff. But I do get help in that area. I do have to worry about that.
Randy, when you like these places because you visited them.
I do.
When you're writing it, do you have to go there and see, you drive a half a mile down this road and then you turn left and that sort of thing?
That's a very good question. Many of the writers that I know in the group will deliberately choose a fictional location so they don't have to do that. I decided that I wanted to be able to capture this area as much as possible. So we made multiple trips to these places. Well, that's not really true. The last one I was planning on making multiple trips before the pandemic hit. So we made a trip, and then I did spend a lot of time on the phone with people down there to try to make sure that I had not so much the distance, but so that the ambiance is picked up. So that even though, for example, in Blood on the Chesapeake, it happens in a little town called Wilshire. If you drive on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay, you won't find Wilshire, okay? Because I didn't want to ascribe a lynching to any particular town there. Incidentally, there were 2 lynchings on the eastern shore that happened 20 years prior to the story in my book. But in that book, they travel to St. Michael's and Easton and other places that are on the shore, on Oxford, so that people who are familiar with the area go, oh yeah, I've been. They actually go to a restaurant. In fact, we launched Blood on the Chesapeake at the restaurant where Daryl and Aaron have their first real date. So I try to build those kinds of things in. We've been to Cape May a couple of different times, and it is a fascinating place. And one of the things I tried to do was I tried to capture. How many people have been to Cape May? Anybody? Okay, Cape May is unlike any place I've ever been in the United States. It has the second largest collection of Victorians in the United States. Supposedly San Francisco has more, but San Francisco, they're spread out all over in Cape May. Cape May is a little town smaller than Lebanon, physically smaller than Lebanon. And they've got over 160 Victorians. It's just absolutely fascinating. The story behind that is really interesting. And so I build that into the story. For me, the history and the geography of the places is part of the lore of the story. And I've tried to be as true to that as possible. And Daryl and Aaron stay at a hotel that we've been at called the Inn of Cape May, which is a beautiful place right in the center of Cape May, which also happens to be haunted. So the ghost from the inn tends to pay him a visit. Well, actually, pays him a visit, not her a visit. Yes?
Now, with that in mind, when you use a place that does exist, do you get permission?
Yes. Every place that you see that I have written about, every restaurant, bookstore, church, and the new one, a scene takes place on Christmas Eve in a Catholic church in Crystal River. Every one of those I've written and requested, gotten permission from those people to use that. That's a very good question. Now, every publisher doesn't require that, but my publisher does. I have a beer that I mentioned in there. I got permission from the beer company to use the beer, the name of the beer in the thing. So yeah, that's all part of the requirement of getting things right. And for me, getting it accurate is really important. I can't tell you how many times I've had readers write to me and go, man, did you nail this? This is exactly what this is like, or I felt really good. In Blood on the Chesapeake, there's several really big sections on sailing. I'm no expert on sailing. I've been sailing a couple times, so I had to use people who are experts in those areas, and that's what I try to do. So when it's something I don't know, I either get somebody that I can count on, or somebody else reviews it and goes, no, they don't do that. They do this instead. Yes?
I know they're like the same characters. If someone starts the third one, will they be at a loss?
I don't think so. Each of the books are intended to be written as a standalone. The reviews of The new book are just coming in, so I can't say that. But the reviews of the second book, by example, many of the reviewers say this. This can easily be read as a standalone, but once you read it, you're going to want to go back and read the first one. That's kind of the typical one. They do follow the same character. So that basically, Daryl and Aaron are the two central characters in all three books. There are critical other characters that are involved. So, for example, in the first book, in Blood on the Chesapeake, it's actually two different timelines. So, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. One of the things that's different about the books when you guys pick this up is the books all take place. This one's in 1999. Crimson at Cape, or 1998. Crimson at Cape May is in 1999, and the newest one, Scarlet, is actually at the turnover between 99 and 2000. But in this story, there's actually two stories. The one story takes place in 1964. So the lynching occurred 30-some years earlier, and the part of that story is told through a diary of a girl we meet in here, about a diary from that time. In Crimson at Cape May, I decided that I wanted to add a teenager. So Daryl encounters a teenage runaway who also happens to be a sensitive. Her name is Cassie. So about a little more than a third of the story is told from Cassie's point of view. And in the newest book, Scarlet at Crystal River, one of the central characters is an immigrant that came over when he was 15. His name is Luis. He's now in his 20s, and he's helping translate for Daryl and Aaron because they don't speak any Spanish when he's doing research on migrant families. So there are those kinds of differences in each one, but if you only want to buy one and you want to buy the Christmas one, you might be sorry that you didn't buy the others, but you won't have any trouble understanding it, I don't think. Yes?
So have you had a ghost encounter so that you talk about?
Every place I go, I'm always asked that question. The answer is no. I've not had a personal, you would think so with my fascination with ghosts, but I have not had a personal encounter. Now, I've had people out in my extended family who have had that I believe, and I have had friends who have shared their experiences with me. That's kind of what got me interested in it in the first place. And when somebody says, well, what do you believe? I believe what Shakespeare said. In Hamlet, in one of the exchanges in Hamlet, he said, the character says, Hamlet says, there's more to heaven and earth than is dreamt of in your philosophy. So I think that's kind of, there are things that are just we don't understand, and ghosts happen to be one of those. Anybody have any other questions I can answer for you? John?
Randy, now you said the first book takes place in 98?
98.
And then 99?
99, and then 99, 2000. Right there.
Well, your poor protagonist doesn't get a break, does he?
He does not. I'm trying to figure if when I do the fourth book, what break I'm going to give him. So I think there's going to be a baby coming. I don't know. Well, the fun part is just kind of percolating on that. Well, I really appreciate, you've been a great group. I appreciate the chance to share my little presentation with you. I will stick around and sell the books and give you a personalized autograph copy. But thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much, Randy. Most enjoyable. So Randy will be over here to sell the books and sign the autographs and what have you. Don't forget that the gift shop does have 10% off everything in it, and your cost to come here also includes the museum, so check out the Bing Davis. Hope to see you next month when Elizabeth Cady Stanton will talk about The Coming Girl. Thank you very much.